In the 19th century, Europe and America were gripped by a strange fascination. People flocked to see what they called human wonders from distant lands. But behind that curiosity lay a dark story of racism, exploitation, and cruelty. This is the story of the human zoos, a forgotten chapter of modern history. The Age of Empire and Curiosity. The 19th century was the era of empire. European powers were conquering parts of Africa, Asia, and the Pacific. Many citizens had never traveled beyond their own towns or villages. To them, the colonies were mysterious places filled with wild animals and exotic people. At that time, exhibitions and fairs became popular forms of public entertainment. World's fairs, city exhibitions, and traveling shows drew millions. They displayed new inventions, art, and culture from around the world. But they also displayed people, real men, women, and children, as if they were curiosities. The birth of human exhibitions. The first major display of this kind appeared in the early 1800s. Entrepreneurs realized that ordinary people would pay to see natives from faraway lands. They were shown as living proof of European dominance and colonial expansion. It was a visual message. Look how civilized we are and how primitive they are. In 1810, a young Khoisan woman from South Africa named Sarah Baartman was brought to Europe. She became known as the Hottentot Venus, a cruel nickname reflecting racist stereotypes. Crowds paid money to see her body displayed on stage. She was studied by scientists who claimed her anatomy proved racial differences. After her tragic death, her remains were even kept in a museum. Her story became one of the earliest and most tragic examples of human display. The rise of ethnological expositions. By the mid-1800s, human exhibitions became organized on a massive scale. These were called ethnological expositions, a term meant to sound scientific. Cities like Paris, London, Berlin, and New York hosted these displays. Promoters claimed they were educational and anthropological, but in truth, they were shows built for profit and public spectacle. Groups of indigenous people were brought from Africa, Asia, and the Americas. They were told they would perform traditional dances or crafts for a short time. Instead, they often found themselves trapped behind fences, living in mock villages. Visitors stared, pointed, and laughed as they performed daily life for strangers. The Paris World's Fair and beyond. One of the most famous examples was the 1889 Paris World's Fair. Nearly 28 million people attended. The highlight of the fair was the grand showcase of the French colonies. Entire African villages were rebuilt inside Paris, complete with huts and tools. Hundreds of African men and women were made to live there for months. They ate, slept, and worked under constant observation. Similar scenes took place in Germany and Belgium. Berlin Zoo held a Nubian village to entertain visitors. In 1897, the Brussels exhibition displayed 267 Congolese people in a makeshift Congo village. Visitors described them as if they were wild animals. These events served to justify colonial rule, promoting the idea that Europeans were superior. The American version. Across the Atlantic, the United States held its own human exhibits. At the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair, anthropology displays were a major draw. The U.S. government used them to demonstrate its growing power in the Philippines. More than 1,000 Filipinos were displayed in a mock village at the fair. They were labeled primitive tribes who needed American guidance and civilization. Visitors could even compare different races side by side as if studying specimens. One of the people shown there, a man named Ota Benga, became infamous. He was an Mbuti pygmy from the Congo brought to America by a missionary. In 1906, he was exhibited in the Bronx Zoo alongside monkeys and apes. The zoo's director justified it as scientific education, but it caused outrage among Black ministers and the few who saw the cruelty behind it. Ota Benga's story ended tragically, leaving deep scars on the history of racism. The pseudo-science of race. Many of these exhibitions were linked to racist theories of the time. 19th century scientists promoted scientific racism, ranking races by physical traits. They measured skulls, skin color, and facial features to support colonial ideologies. Human zoos gave these ideas visual proof, staged and manipulated for impact. Visitors left believing they had seen lower stages of human evolution. This illusion helped justify empire, slavery, and the exploitation of indigenous peoples. The lives of the exhibited. For those who were displayed, life was harsh and humiliating. Conditions were poor, food was limited, and privacy was non-existent. Many became ill from cold climates or poor sanitation. Language barriers made escape or protest nearly impossible. Some performers never made it home again. Yet there were moments of resistance and courage. Some groups performed with pride, showing their traditions with dignity. Others used the attention to demand respect or speak about their homelands. Their spirit remained stronger than the cages built around them. The slow end of the human zoos. By the early 20th century, attitudes began to change. Public protests increased, especially from human rights and anti-slavery groups. Scientists also started rejecting racial hierarchies and exposing the abuse behind the shows. The horrors of both world wars further discredited ideas of racial superiority. Gradually, such exhibits disappeared from fairs and zoos, but the mindset that created them did not vanish overnight. For decades, museums still displayed indigenous peoples' remains as curiosities. Colonial exhibitions continued in some places until the 1950s. It took time for societies to acknowledge the inhumanity of it all. Remembering the past today. In recent decades, historians and activists have uncovered this hidden history. Museums across Europe have started returning human remains to their descendants. Countries like France, Germany, and Belgium now openly discuss their colonial pasts. Documentaries, books, and memorials honor those who were displayed. The story of Sarah Baartman has become a symbol of dignity reclaimed. Her remains were finally returned to South Africa in 2002 for a proper burial. In many ways, her story speaks for all who endured public exhibition and humiliation. Reflections on humanity. The human zoos of the 19th century reveal the twisted connection between curiosity and cruelty. They show how entertainment and pseudo-science were used to dehumanize entire peoples. They remind us that racism often hides behind education or art or progress. Most of all, they challenge us to see how ordinary people accepted cruelty as normal. Today, when we visit museums or cultural exhibits, we must ask hard questions. Whose story is being told, and who gets to tell it? Are we honoring those cultures or repeating the gaze of the human zoo? Remembering these exhibitions is not about guilt, but awareness. It reminds us that dignity and respect are universal, not cultural luxuries. Every human being, no matter where they come from, deserves to be seen as equal. The human zoos may have vanished, but their echoes remain.